a week. I'm mostly going to reflect on this abundant week that we had at Vacation Bible School because it was so full, and I learned so much every time I spend time with kids. I often think the church believes that Vacation Bible School is to teach children about Jesus, but I actually think sometimes that's wrong. I think if you put a bunch of adults with 40 kids in a room and some stories for about 20 hours during the week, that the adults are actually going to learn more about how hard it can be to love God and love others, and that we get stretched as adults. Any adults get a little stretched during the week. You have to find new energy. And those kids, they know God in a way that's so simple and doesn't have so many words that they usually teach me a great deal more than I feel like I'm able to teach them. There's this old joke. There's a new pastor, and he comes to his church for the very first time, and he has to do the children's moment. And so he spends the whole week devising this great object lesson. He's got it all planned out. He knows exactly what the kids will say and how he'll respond. And so he sits down and he says, I've got a quiz. I have a riddle for you. So I'm going to give you a clue, and you tell me what I'm talking about. He says, it's very small. Ooh, ooh, says the little girl. I know. Okay, what is it? Jesus! No, it's not Jesus. Okay, I'll give you another clue. Okay, it's very small. It has a bushy tail. Oh, I know, says the little boy. It's Jesus. The answer is Jesus. No, it's small. It has a bushy tail. It lives in a tree. It likes to eat nuts. Oh, the kids say, oh, we know. It's Jesus. It's small. It has a bushy tail. It lives in a tree. It eats nuts. Think harder. It's not Jesus. And this little girl taps him on the shoulder and says, Pastor, you're new here. I've been going to Sunday school for 5 years, and I'll tell you the answer is always Jesus. That joke, it got me to thinking about how the answer, we come to expect that the answer is Jesus, and sometimes we don't go past that. And I was thinking this week of how it's not really for me that the answer is Jesus, like on a multiple choice quiz. It's that Jesus is the one who answers me when I'm hungry. And Jesus is the one who answers my cries for help. And Jesus is the one who answers my deepest longings. There's this difference between knowing the answer is Jesus and then calling out to him and having him answer your heart prayer. And being with kids in a small room for 20 hours and doing all sorts of wonderful crafts and having all those little voices saying, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? Can you help me? I think I'm good for about 17 hours. And then those last 3, I noticed my mom voice was showing up a lot more. Get out from under that table now. Jesus loves you. That's what it felt like. And then I'd say, I know I'm having a little more trouble bridging the knowledge of Jesus' love and then the action part. But Jesus, I have never come and called on Jesus and not had him answer me with love. The patience of God is incredible. And to think of God being that parent, and we're always calling his name for little things. My shoe is untied. I need help. I don't know how to solve this problem in my life. And harder things. I'm sick. This is too hard. I have too much. And Jesus has never, ever answered me with anything but patience and grace and love. So he's not just the answer. on a page in a book. He's the one. He's the force. He's the presence that comes and is close to us and answers our cries. And this story that they read about Jesus feeding, there are two, right? One, there's 4,000 loaves left, or baskets, and one, there's 5,000. I'm going to refer to the 5,000 one, because that's the one we were telling at VBS. But it's a little bit like the squirrel joke, where Jesus is with his disciples. They are exhausted. It is way past hour 17. They have been healing and teaching and being close to people. They have been holding people's hands and praying with them, and they've been going straight. They've just been on the job with Jesus, and it's been relentless. And they come to this point where they're just too tired. They don't have any more to give. Their pockets are empty. Their hearts are empty. Their mom voice is coming out. And they say, we need a break. And so Jesus says, you're right, we need a break. They hop in a boat and they sail across the sea, far, far, far away from all those voices, far away from all of those needs. They go to take care of themselves for a while. As a mom, this moment reminds me a little, if you have small children, you know that moment when you decide to run to the bathroom because all your kids are busy? And then right as you close the door, there's 3 knocks on the door? Or if you've ever snuck into the kitchen with small children and you're going to get a bite of Ben & Jerry's and you don't want to share, so you're trying to do it sneakily, and then all of a sudden, all of your children need your attention right then, and they rush into the kitchen and they catch you with your ice cream. So that's exactly what this moment is like. The disciples have finally gotten this moment of peace. They're far away. No one can reach them. But then as they come to the shore, someone spots them and tells their friends, who tells their friends, who tells their friends, and all of a sudden, there's more than 5,000 people sitting on the hillside where their boat's going to land. And Jesus says, come on, let's get out. They're hungry. And the disciples put on their fakest, most compassionate grin, and they walk out after Jesus. And they look at the sun and they say, well, thank goodness it's almost nighttime, because we can send them away soon. Bedtime is calling. But Jesus looks and he sees these people, and he knows that they're hungry. They are physically hungry. They are spiritually hungry. I mean, it takes a lot of hunger to run out onto a hillside to catch a boat, right? And to sit there all day listening to someone teach far away when you probably can't hear him well. They want to be close to Jesus, and his heart cannot tell them no. So the disciples say, Jesus, it's really time for dinner. And look, we don't have very much food. And by the way, we're still exhausted. So let's tell the crowd to go on and get their dinner somewhere else so that we can go away and have that rest that you talked about. And Jesus looks out and he asks them this question. How many loaves do you have? How many loaves? Well, 5, Jesus. The answer is 5. Then I imagine he might ask again, how many loaves do you have? 5. We've counted them. Here they are. There are 5 loaves. There are more than 5,000 people. We cannot feed them all. We have 5, Jesus. 5 is the answer. How many loaves do you have? We only have 5. We have 5. We don't have enough. So Jesus tells them, go and see. And he takes their loaves and he blesses them and gives thanks for their nourishment. And he hands them to the disciples. And the disciples go out and they start giving away their dinner. And they give, and they give, and they give, and they give, until every single mouth is fed. until every hunger is satisfied, including their own. And at the end of all of that giving, they find they have 12 baskets full of bread left over. During Vacation Bible School, we were talking about abundance. And we were stretching our hearts to understand, what does abundance mean? And I think what I am feeling today is that it means that one person has an idea or a dream, and that a whole other bunch of people come around them and make it happen. There were so many moments during that week where I was aware that I did not have enough bread to feed all of the needs. Or my basket was running a little empty. But someone else would come alongside me and they would put some into my basket. Or they would do some feeding. Or they would hug a child who needed some comfort. Or they would make sure a child that I was fed up with became a leader and give him a job, because they knew it was important for him to be part of that community. And VBS is this incredibly fast, furious, where you squish church into these very, very full hours. But in that, I found that it didn't matter if I had enough. What mattered was that if all of us together would ask God to make what we have be enough for who is there. This year, I said to Brandon, I'd like to stay in this room, and I think 40 kids is the most we could really put in that room. And he said, well, I don't think we'll get that many kids, really. I mean, we probably 20 or 25, so it shouldn't be a problem. And I said, that's fine. And then we had 40 kids sign up. It's not that the number matters, but it was a moment of abundance, where we had set a table, and we found that kids wanted to be there. They wanted to grow. They came joyfully to worship. They were invested in the stories. They had ownership over those. We have these marvelous godly play stories because of the gifts of people in this church, and they're these beautiful wooden pieces and felt underlays. And they tell the story in such a simple way, but it's so rich. And I was thinking, just having those stories and being able to go and get a basket with this beautiful, sacred, valuable piece of God's story, and to put that out and to have kids tuned in. When we told the story, they'd all come really close. And when I told the story of the 5,000, a little boy said, "Oh my gosh," when there were baskets left over. He could feel the story through that gift of these pieces that he can touch and use every week. And then there were adults. I put out this dream and said, I have an idea, and if anyone wants to join me. And then people just kept coming. I could help lead crafts. I would love to help set up and make a garden. I could make some trees back there with you. I'd love to be a group leader. I'd love to bring food. I'm going to leave some snacks in the kitchen for you, or some water bottles. I sat down to write thank you cards, and I think my pile is this tall. All because adults in this church wanted and joyfully gave to make there be enough, to make there be so much more than I had in my basket. And we have this beautiful space that generations before us built and protected and kept clean and tidied and visioned so that there would be a sacred place for God's people to gather and come close to God. And we had lots of food. We had such good food. People brought in, we had Taco Tuesday, and we had pancakes, and we had Thanksgiving in June, and we had a midnight snack and a party with the most beautiful cakes, all because people knew that that was a gift they could give, and so they did. And then we had enough. And because those 40 kids came, we were able to give half of what each of their registration was as a gift back to Lynn County Food Share. And so we're having a check written for $200 that will go to feeding people around God's table in our community. And when we calculated that, $1 can buy 15 pounds of food. So we figured out that we were going to be able to give 3,000 pounds of food back to our community, just because all of these people in this room, in this church, decided to invest in something in God's dream. So I'm challenged, and I challenge you, as I reflect on the beauty of a week with children and what they teach us, on the gifts of this church, on the abundant givers in this church who always show up. I'm challenged to be reminded that it doesn't matter how much bread is in my basket. There are days when my basket is empty, or when all I have is crumbs and I think I can't give any more. And there are days when my basket feels very full and I feel like I have so much to give. And the challenge is to remember that what is in our basket doesn't matter. It's who we invite to share that food with us. And when we call on Jesus, whether we have too much or we have too little, he is the one who answers us. And he makes something beautiful out of what we can give. And so let us be those who are always calling on Jesus and knowing that he will answer us. This is the gospel for today.